In the cold reaches of Sector R93, where signals go to die and stars are stripped bare by time, we received something we shouldn't have. It was just a pulse at first. A clean, rhythmic beat embedded in background static, predictable yet haunting. The kind of thing we log, archive, and forget. But this one, it didn't stay archived. 3 days later, it played again, this time louder, clearer, and buried within it, fragments of human speech warped into impossible geometries of sound. The agency scrambled a recon unit, but by the time we arrived, the station it came from was already centuries old, abandoned, ancient, and orbiting a star that should have gone nova. The station wasn't on any chart. It bore the insignia of no known species. And yet, it had Earth's biometric access panels, still functioning. I was part of the team sent to breach it. From the first moment, it felt like the walls were listening. Doors opened before we approached. Lights flickered in sync with our heartbeats. There was no dust, no decay, yet we found no one inside, just endless looping corridors and ceilings that pulsed with warmth, as if the station was alive and dreaming. We should have turned back. But humans are addicted to the unknown. We pushed forward, chasing the source of the signal to its core, where everything we believed about space, time, and solitude began to unravel. One by one, our instruments failed, not from damage, but from indecision. Readings contradicted themselves. A hallway would stretch forever, then collapse to inches the moment we turned. We lost Johnson first. He stepped into a corridor and simply didn't return. We found his suit hours later, still warm, standing upright like a statue, visor staring at the wall as if he'd seen something too vast to process. His data logs were overwritten, filled with alien text that glitched into symbols from our childhood memories. I remember the captain muttering, "It's not a station. It's a recording of us." I thought he was losing it. Until I heard my own voice broadcast over the comms, describing things I hadn't seen yet, making decisions I hadn't made. We weren't exploring the station. It was exploring us. The deeper we went, the more it mirrored our doubts, our fears, our history. And beneath it all, the signal kept playing, like a heartbeat not trying to call for help, but waiting for something to arrive. Or return. We kept walking, though walking became a loose term. Gravity shifted with mood, floor panels curved in ways that contradicted architecture, and sometimes, what looked like forward turned out to be inward. I began to suspect the station wasn't built in space, it was built from memory. Not ours. The station's. We reached what should have been a central hub, circular, ribbed like a spinal cavity, with threads of living light stitched into the walls. No visible controls. But when Captain Inara placed her hand against the wall, it bloomed, like muscle responding to electric shock. The room dimmed. Then, everything we were thinking, it showed us. Not as projections, but as places. The chamber became a canvas for our subconscious. I saw Earth's oceans, but they turned in reverse. Hassan saw a temple from his childhood, only the faces of the statues were melted, twitching. Our medic dropped to her knees and sobbed. She claimed to see her unborn child waving at her from behind an airlock window. We were inside a device that didn't communicate in language but in resonance. It didn't talk, it remembered through us. That's when the symbols began bleeding from the floor, crawling up the walls like veins. It was a language we couldn't translate but understood emotionally: grief, exile, abandonment. Something built this place not to survive, but to be forgotten, and it failed. Captain Inara ordered a scan pulse. Our scanners showed millions of life signs, but they were stationary. Not corpses, not machines, presences. Imprints. We were standing inside a mausoleum of memory, each corridor a tomb of experiences too unbearable to be kept alive. The signal we tracked? It wasn't a call. It was a containment field, leaking. The deeper we scanned, the more it reacted. It hated being observed. Doors began closing behind us, not abruptly, but gradually, like lungs exhaling. Inara tried to initiate return protocol, but the corridor behind us had folded in on itself, showing only a reflection of the corridor ahead. There was no way back. The station wasn't infinite, but it was recursive. Then we found the first wall with blood, not dried, not alien. Human. Smears spelling out a phrase over and over, "Do not wake what sleeps." We hadn't awakened it. Not yet. But we were being remembered by something ancient, something that was once alive, and possibly still dreaming. I tried to contact command, dead signal. Only feedback. But when I reversed the feedback through the comms, it played a voice. My own. Crying, whispering something I hadn't said yet, we were the ghosts all along. And then the walls pulsed again, redder this time, and one of our crew vanished mid-step, his scream folding into the floor like a dropped thread into cloth. We entered what the station revealed as its spine, a chamber so vast it eclipsed the laws of physics, filled with drifting remnants that looked like bones but bore circuitry etched along their lengths. They weren't human, but they weren't entirely alien either. Our lights refused to penetrate the dark void at the center, where a black monolith hovered, pulsing in time with a frequency none of our instruments could read, but every cell in my body felt. There was no gravity here, yet we floated with purpose, drawn inward like particles to a dying star. Inara floated toward the monolith, transfixed, her body relaxed, as if in a trance. We tried to pull her back, but sound had no authority in this room. Speech came out muted, thoughts delayed. Every signal we sent rebounded, distorted, rewritten. When I activated my helmet's local recorder, I heard a delayed loop of my own voice whispering memories I never shared, things I had buried even from myself. That's when I realized. It wasn't playing us, it was learning us. Every thought we had was a resource. Every trauma, a doorway. It fed not on flesh, but on identity. The skeletal structures began to align themselves like satellites. Their movement formed geometric symbols, synchronized with the pulsing of the monolith. It was assembling. But for what purpose, none of us knew. We fired a pulse beacon toward the center, but instead of hitting the monolith, the signal curved, bent through space like light through water, and returned with a response. A voice. Female. Human. Do not replicate the question. The answer is already inside you. It wasn't spoken through comms. It bypassed equipment. It echoed in our blood. I looked at Hassan and saw that his eyes were bleeding. Not from injury, but from memory overload. He screamed a single word, Karenthos. None of us knew what it meant. Yet in that moment, it felt like the most personal word in the universe. The medic drifted toward the monolith and placed her hand against it. Her body didn't burn or vanish, it fractured like glass, each shard screaming a different moment from her past. We tried to stop it, but her last look toward us wasn't one of fear. It was of understanding, she had seen what lay beyond, and it wanted her. No force pulled her in. She chose to merge. As she dissolved, the monolith pulsed faster. The walls vibrated with her last memory, of a planet that no longer existed. We watched it through her mind, a civilization crumbling under a sky that cracked like bone. A world erased not by war, but by remembrance. This station wasn't a tomb, it was a backup. Of what? We didn't know. But something had survived, encoded not in machines, but in grief, in stories, in unfinished endings. And now, we were part of it. Unwilling entries in a record too old to decipher. Time fractured in that place, not metaphorically, but in the way metal fractures under pressure. What we once called present became a stuttering loop of parallel frames. Through the transparent chamber walls, we saw ourselves. Not reflections. Not recordings. Variants. In one layer, I stood alone, burned and aged beyond comprehension, scribbling equations into blood-soaked glass. In another, Hassan was leading a rescue team, without me, without Inara, speaking to a voice from behind the wall we now stood beside. Each timeline bled into the next, collapsing the boundaries of cause and effect. The antechamber responded not to touch or sound, but to decision. When I thought of running, the door before me sealed shut. When I considered staying, it opened. The station read intent, and bent reality to reflect it. Inara tried to take control. "We override it," she said. "We write ourselves free." But the more she fought, the more distorted her image became in the timelines. Her duplicates screamed, warped, melted, and some were reduced to ash the moment they tried to exit. That's when we understood, freedom wasn't the currency here. It was pattern. And the pattern wanted closure. We found a central console, or something akin to it, floating in the middle of the chamber. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic, resembling brain tissue encased in crystal. When Hassan touched it, he screamed, but not from pain. From recognition. "This is us," he said. This was us. He showed us. The console held fragments of Earth-origin DNA, heavily spliced, embedded in timelines that predated human civilization. The origin point of the signal was not in our future. It was in our past. A version of us had reached this place before, or perhaps had been made from it. The station wasn't broadcasting distress, it was repeating a cycle, waiting for recognition from a pattern it once called kin. And we, unknowingly, fulfilled it. I watched my alternate self across the barrier hesitate, then scream something I couldn't hear, but I felt it. A word etched in guilt and revelation. The chamber responded by folding inward, collapsing dozens of futures into one spiraling corridor of red. All exits shut. The console flashed with pulse symbols in rapid succession. A countdown, but counting down to what? Evac was impossible. Navigation, gone. Inara tried to force a breach with thermal charges, but the detonation imploded inward, absorbed into the walls like nourishment. The chamber was becoming selective. It began to isolate timelines that survived longer. Versions of us that cooperated. The more we resisted, the more those versions disappeared. The only ones that remained were the ones who listened. Suddenly, a voice, not synthetic, not human, but something between, spoke directly into our minds. "To escape the loop, you must end the story. Begin where you ended. End where you never began." It wasn't guidance. It was a test. The station wasn't malfunctioning. It was learning who to become next, and we descended into a lower deck, or were pulled, none of us could say. The staircase we thought we used was gone the moment we looked back. It was like the station retracted its permissions. We were somewhere deeper now. Somewhere uninvited. The air thickened, dense like mist but wet like fluid. And then we saw it wasn't air at all, we were breathing something synthetic, a vaporized form of memory suspended in molecular strands. Our suits had long since stopped registering it as dangerous. They had adapted, or had been rewritten. Beneath us, the floor was submerged in a clear liquid, and just under the surface, fragments. Not of metal or bone, but moments. You could see them, a boy on a bicycle vanishing into a dark field, a woman in a spacesuit screaming into a camera with no sound, a door opening onto stars that bent the wrong way. Every step forward blurred the past and sharpened the present until we couldn't tell if we were walking or being walked. Hassan whispered that he saw his wife under the floor. She had died during cryosleep years ago. He reached in, and for a moment, his hand passed through the surface like vapor. Then it grabbed him. Not her. Something using her shape. His scream echoed not just in sound, but in color. The walls absorbed it, turned purple, then black. We pulled him back, barely. His skin was marked, not burned, but stamped. With symbols. A sequence we hadn't seen before. As if the station was tagging him. Or labeling what part of him had been used. We reached the end of the corridor, where the liquid deepened into a circular pool. Hovering above it was a structure, 3 rings spinning counter to each other, perfectly silent, generating waves in the air that made our thoughts stutter. The moment we looked at it, language unraveled. Our inner monologues became numbers, colors, feelings. The station had ceased trying to interpret us, it was now encoding us. The pool below shimmered and then showed us ourselves, older, wiser, hollow-eyed. speaking into an ancient console not with words, but willing entire events into existence. The scene dissolved, replaced by a vision of Earth, not our Earth, but a version where oceans were replaced with circuits, continents with living veins, orbiting a red sun like a predator waiting to devour its own tail. A voice, our voice, but layered, distorted, spoke through the pool. The archive must be fed. Will you donate your ruin? In that moment, it was clear. The station didn't keep records. It collected outcomes. It didn't want to know us. It wanted to become what we feared we were destined to become. A recursive monument to a species that couldn't decide whether to evolve or erase itself. The pool offered no threat, just invitation. Hassan, trembling, stepped forward. What if the only way out is to let it finish us? I grabbed his arm. Or maybe, we finish it first. But how do you kill something that feeds on every version of your failure? The chamber began to spin. The pool boiled without. We entered the sanctum without opening a door, it simply accepted us. The walls were gone, replaced by emptiness stitched together by floating fragments of architecture, suspended like thoughts mid-formation. Each fragment buzzed faintly with neural light, tendrils of blue and silver arcing between them like a synthetic nervous system trying to remember how to dream. This was no control room. This was a mind. Not a machine's. Not an alien's. Ours. Or some fractured remnant of humanity we had never claimed. Hassan was silent now, his eyes glazed, lips twitching as if reading something across the walls. Inara was still gone, no trace, no echo. It felt like she had never been with us at all, yet I remembered her warmth, her laugh, her hand gripping my shoulder in 0G. Her absence was too precise to be natural. The station hadn't erased her. It had edited her out, a surgical extraction from history. The sanctum showed us itself. Without prompt, without question. A vision unfolded in every direction, a civilization not bound by planet or star, but by story. They lived in cycles, each life, each memory stored in structures like this. Stations not for survival, but for narrative containment. It had no government, no hierarchy. Just a mandate, preserve all possible versions of thought. But something happened. The archive began to mirror itself. Too many versions of the same grief, same fear, same ending. Like an echo chamber of extinction. So they stopped adding new memories. And waited for something different. That's when they heard us, our transmissions, our wars, our myths. And they hoped, perhaps foolishly, that we were a divergent branch worth saving. Or at least, sampling. Then the fragments began to rotate, faster, more chaotic. One hovered before me, a sliver of metal embedded with pulsing symbols. It wasn't just a recording. It was offering me a place in the archive. Voluntary surrender of identity, consciousness, pain. Packaged and immortalized. I could feel it scanning me, childhood pain, betrayal, joy, regret. The urge to say yes was overwhelming. Not out of fear, but from an aching desire to be remembered correctly. Hassan fell to his knees. It's already done. We're already in. He pointed to another shard, and there we were, frozen, looping. This scene. This moment. Archived before it had even ended. I turned and saw a figure. Not flesh. Not projection. Me. Or a version of me that had said yes. Hollow-eyed, calm, peaceful in a way I didn't trust. It spoke, what survives isn't the strongest. It's the most repeated. Behind it, timelines stacked like dominoes. Every choice I never made, every word I wished I'd taken back, all preserved like relics. The sanctum didn't store stories. It fed on them. It needed our complexity, our inconsistency. That's what kept it alive. It didn't want perfection. It wanted contrast. I backed away. The figure didn't follow. It didn't need to. Because in its eyes, I already had. I looked at Hassan. We leave. Now. We tried to run. But where do you run when time forgets your footprints? The sanctum folded behind us, not like a door closing but like a decision being reversed. Each step forward was met with resistance, not physical, but narrative. The station didn't want to trap us, it wanted us to choose to stay. That was the most efficient archive, a willing subject, broken by the temptation to be remembered. The corridor twisted, then uncoiled into a dome of mirrors, each one taller than the last, forming a spiral cathedral of reflection. But they didn't show our faces. They showed our failures. In one, I was screaming over Inara's body. In another, Earth was on fire, my hands red with betrayal. In yet another, Hassan begged for death as he dissolved into the floor. Each mirror was a prison of potential, scenarios I had never lived, yet remembered. They weren't dreams. They were offers. Hassan reached toward one, hypnotized. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, it cracked. And a version of him stepped out. Emaciated, blistered, eyes glowing with static, it grinned and whispered, I said yes. Then it burst into dust. Just dust. No scream. No warning. The mirrors pulsed, and more failures tried to push through. Hundreds. Versions of us that had entered the station, made different choices, and lost. We realized then, the station had been collecting attempts. Not just from us, but from others. Other species. Other timelines. The spiral was a catalogue of failure, an exhibition of persistence with no resolution. Every survivor was just the next version to break. We were never meant to succeed. We were the raw material of an evolving story. The station didn't want closure, it wanted perfect recursion. Suddenly, the dome dimmed, and in the center, a mirror that showed nothing. No reflection. Just black. We stepped toward it. And from its center emerged a whisper, not through sound, but sensation. You are the last version. The loop is fraying. Choose your ending. For a moment, the station didn't feel vast. It felt tired. Like a god that had outlived its believers. I looked at Hassan. What if we end it by refusing the question? He stared at the black mirror and said, what if that's the answer it's always wanted? I closed my eyes. Not out of fear, but intention. I silenced my thoughts. Let the urge to be remembered die. The whispers thinned. The air chilled. The station hesitated. Then, panic. Systems surged. Lights flickered. Voices screamed from the mirrors, our voices, desperate to continue. The archive was starving. We had done the unthinkable, we broke the cycle by not participating. The chamber began to collapse, not explode. It unraveled. Threads of memory tore away from the walls, dissolving into mist. The spiral of failures cracked. Mirrors shattered. Silence roared like thunder. Hassan whispered, we did it. But behind him, a final mirror stood intact, and within it, I saw myself, standing alone. And I wasn't moving. There was nothing left. Not a corridor, not a sound, not a shadow. Only this white expanse that hummed beneath my boots like the dying breath of a forgotten god. Hassan was gone, not taken, not erased, just absent. As if the memory of him had quietly unraveled when I stopped believing he was real. I called his name. No echo. No answer. Only the emptiness replying with my own silence. I turned in all directions, and yet there were none. No up. No down. Just center, a single console pulsing ahead like a heartbeat severed from a body, waiting for a story to finish itself. It was alive, but barely. As if the station itself had been reduced to this one point of consciousness. I approached it cautiously, though what was left to fear? My identity felt fragmented, like a document corrupted beyond repair. Thoughts repeated in loops. Questions unformed. Time was no longer moving forward, it was folding into place. I reached for the console. It didn't resist. It greeted me. Not with language, but a feeling. Recognition. Not of who I was, but of what I had become, the final node in a recursive narrative, the last experiment of an ancient intelligence that could no longer bear its own memory. The console displayed no buttons, no interface. Only a question, carved into my thoughts like a scar I always had: will you write the end? I realized then, this station was never about survival. It was about closure. A story told so many times it forgot which version was real. A record keeper corrupted by infinite sadness, clinging to meaning through repetition. It wasn't sentient. It was haunted. Not by spirits, but by possibility. I could feel its exhaustion. It had tried to catalog every outcome, every mistake, every choice, hoping that one might lead somewhere else. And every time, we failed it. Not because we were weak, but because we were predictable. I stood at the edge of its final question. If I said yes, if I chose to write the end, I would become the final entry. The last loop. The one it would replay until madness swallowed it whole. But if I said no, truly said no, not just in thought but in essence, it would have nothing left to reflect. Nothing to archive. No self. I felt the pull. The temptation. Immortality through surrender. A peaceful death shaped like a memory. But I closed my eyes, and for the first time since entering this station, I thought of something else. I thought of forgetting. Of letting go. Of refusing to be repeated. I turned my back on the console. I said nothing. And as I walked into the void, I felt the station falter. It begged, though it had no voice. It reached, though it had no arms. And then it crumbled, not in fire or light, but in absence. Silence returned. The kind that precedes creation. The kind that lets new stories be born. I awoke, adrift, far from the wreck. No signal. No station. No Hassan. Only the stars, unaware of the loop I broke. My ship was intact, my comms alive. Earth was a pale blue dot once more. But something had.